What if I told you that your most intense love story, that overwhelming passion that redefined your world, was not originally yours? What if your greatest ambition, the one that wakes you up every day, and your darkest fear, the one that paralyzes you in the dead of night, also didn't truly belong to you? We pride ourselves on our individuality, believing we are the sole authors of our lives. But the truth is much more ancient and mysterious. Within each of us lies a script, an invisible script, written not with ink, but with the symbols and experiences of all the ancestors who came before. It is a cosmic drama being staged across billions of lives, and you are the lead actor on your own stage, unaware that your most important lines have already been whispered by heroes, villains, lovers, and sages for millennia. This script has two chapters, one written with your personal pain and joy, and another, much older, written with the blood and dreams of all humanity. To ignore the script is to live like a puppet. To decipher it is the only path to true freedom. If you feel the truth in these words, if a part of you has always known there was something more operating beneath the surface, then this journey is for you. We have not come here to give you easy answers, but to hand you the map to your own inner labyrinth. Do this now. Subscribe to this channel to claim your right to become the director of your own story, and no longer an actor in an unknown script. Leave your like as a sign, a symbolic gesture that you accept the invitation to this profound journey. And comment below I decipher the code to anchor your intention and join other travelers who are also ready to awaken. From this point on, nothing will ever be the same. We navigate life in the most fragile of vessels, our consciousness. It is the small island illuminated by the light of reason, where we organize our days, make our decisions, and build the identity we present to the world. I am like this, we say. I like this, I don't like that. We believe this small island is the totality of our being. This is a tragic and fundamental mistake. Beneath the calm, controlled surface of this island, there is an ocean, a vast, dark, and pulsating ocean of unfathomable depth. This ocean is the unconscious, and it constitutes the true mass of our psychic continent. Consciousness is merely the tip of the iceberg, the visible part that emerges from the waters, while the immense force that moves and directs it remains submerged, invisible to ordinary eyes. Modern psychology, in its arrogance, long tried to ignore this ocean, treating the mind as if it were only the island. It mapped every inch of the firm land, but forgot that the tides, the currents, and the sea monsters of the deep are the true masters of the archipelago. It is in this ocean that the true causes of our suffering and the sources of our most sublime creativity reside. The anxiety that arises for no apparent reason, it is a wave from the depths, the sudden inspiration that solves an insoluble problem. It is a treasure brought in by the tide. To live only in consciousness is like being a king ruling a grain of sand on the beach, while a submerged and powerful empire operates under his silent orders. The first task for one who seeks self-knowledge is not to better organize their island, but to learn how to dive. It is to develop the courage to explore the dark waters of what we do not know in ourselves, because it is there, in that vast and frightening territory, that the answers to the questions our consciousness doesn't even know how to formulate are found. The unconscious is not an enemy to be conquered, but an ancestral ally to be understood. It communicates with us not through logic, but through an older language, the language of symbols, dreams, myths, and symptoms. Every slip of the tongue, every lapse of memory, every disproportionate emotion is a message in a bottle, sent from the depths to the shore of our consciousness, begging to be read. The journey we begin today is that of becoming translators of this sacred language. It is the process of reunifying the kingdom of light with the empire of shadows, so that the king of the island can finally know the totality of his kingdom, and rule not just over the sand, but over the tides that shape his destiny. The question that remains is, are you afraid of drowning, or do you long to discover the pearls that exist only at the bottom of the sea? Because the psyche, in its totality, is not the firm land or the ocean. It is the sacred dynamic between the two. To ignore one of them is to live a life in half, a fragmented existence haunted by what we refuse to see. True integrity is born from the courageous encounter between what we know about ourselves and the infinite mystery that still resides within us. Let's begin our dive with the layer closest to the surface, the one that is most yours, the personal unconscious. Imagine it as a crypt, an archaeological cellar located directly beneath the floorboards of your conscious home. In this crypt, you, or rather, your ego, have stored everything that was incompatible with the person you decided to be. Every painful experience, every shameful desire, every aggressive impulse, every memory that threatened the polished image you built of yourself was thrown down there. And the door was locked, not out of malice, but as a survival mechanism. The ego, like a zealous guardian, needs order and control. Everything that generates conflict, pain, or dissonance is repressed, banished to the shadows to maintain the apparent peace upstairs. The problem is that nothing psychic ever truly dies. What is repressed does not disappear. It merely becomes invisible and autonomous. These discarded memories and emotions organize themselves into complexes. Think of them as ghosts with personalities, fragments of psychic energy that haunt your inner house. You know their effects well, that situation where you have an explosive emotional reaction, completely disproportionate to the trigger. That is a complex being activated. The wound of abandonment, the anger at a father, the humiliation at school. All of this lives in your crypt. When something in the present touches on these old wounds, the complex takes control. You are no longer in command. The ghost of that wounded 5-year-old child is. It reacts with the same pain and fear from decades ago, and your conscious mind, confused, tries to find a logical justification for a behavior that is purely emotional and archaic. This crypt is the source of your projections. When you feel an exaggerated aversion or admiration for someone, often what you are seeing is not the real person, but a hook on which you hang unresolved content from your own crypt. That trait you hate in another is often a repressed quality in yourself. That hero you idolize represents a golden potential you have not yet dared to live. The personal unconscious is, therefore, your personal karma in action. It is the script of your life being influenced by the scenes you tried to cut. As long as you do not descend into the cellar with the lantern of consciousness, you will continue to trip over the same furniture in the dark, repeating the same destructive patterns, attracting the same painful situations, without ever understanding why. Healing, or rather, individuation, begins with the courage to open this door, not to drown in the past, but to rescue the lost fragments of yourself. It is an archaeological work, to excavate with care, clean each artifact, understand its history and meaning, and then bring it into the light, integrating it into the museum of your consciousness. In doing so, the complexes lose their autonomous power. The ghosts reveal themselves as wounded parts of your soul, and by welcoming them, you not only heal your past, but also release an immense amount of psychic energy that was previously spent on maintaining repression. This energy becomes available for life, for creativity, for more authentic relationships. Your personal crypt holds not only your pain, but also your greatest power. Within the crypt of the personal unconscious resides your most feared and, paradoxically, most important figure, the shadow. The shadow is your other self, your dark twin. It is the sum of all the qualities, impulses, and desires that you have actively rejected because they did not fit the idealized image of yourself, your persona. Since childhood, we learn what is good and bad, acceptable and unacceptable, to be loved and accepted by family, school, and society. We identify with the good qualities and repress the bad ones. If we were taught that anger is ugly, we banished it to the shadow. If ambition was seen as selfish, we hid it. If our sensuality was judged, we locked it away. Thus, the shadow becomes the repository of a significant part of our total personality. It is not inherently evil. It is merely unlived. It contains both our lower darkness, our most primitive and destructive instincts, and our superior darkness or shadow gold, our undeveloped talents, our wild creativity, our strength and assertiveness that have been tamed. The problem is that the more we repress the shadow, the denser, darker, and more hostile it becomes, and it always finds a way to manifest. The most common form is projection. We project our shadow onto others. That person who deeply irritates us, that group we despise, that politician we hate. They become the perfect screen for our unrecognized shadow. Fanaticism, prejudice, and intolerance are, in essence, an individual's refusal to confront their own inner darkness. It is easier to hate the evil in the world than to recognize the potential for the same evil within oneself. The shadow also manifests through self-sabotage. The moment you are about to achieve great success, something inexplicable happens. You make a stupid mistake, miss a deadline, start a fight. It is your shadow, feeling neglected and envious of your persona's success, that pulls the rug out from under you to restore balance. It prefers known misery to a happiness that excludes it. The encounter with the shadow is the first and most crucial test on the journey of individuation. It is a morally challenging task, as it requires us to abandon our self-image as a good person and recognize that we are a walking paradox, capable of the noblest altruism and the most sordid pettiness. It means admitting, yes, that which I most despise in others also lives in me. This recognition is painful but immensely liberating. To integrate the shadow does not mean to give in to our darkest impulses. It does not mean becoming a bad person. On the contrary, it means bringing these impulses into the light of consciousness, where we can understand them, dialogue with them, and choose how to channel their immense energy constructively. Repressed anger can become assertiveness and courage to fight for justice. Greed can be transformed into the ambition to create something of value. Repressed sensuality can become a source of vitality and creativity. The integrated shadow is the source of our depth, our authenticity, and our humanity. A person without a shadow is superficial, two-dimensional, predictable. A person who has embraced their shadow is whole, magnetic, and real. The gold is always hidden in the darkest place, and your greatest power is buried in what you fear most about yourself. If the personal unconscious is the crypt beneath your house, the collective unconscious is the very ground upon which all the houses of the world were built. It is the deepest and most ancient layer of the human psyche. It is not something you develop, it is something you inherit. It is the psychic legacy of human evolution, a matrix of primordial patterns and images deposited over millions of years of ancestral experience. Think of it as the psychic DNA of our species. Just as we inherit a body with 2 arms, a heart, and a brain, we also inherit a pre-structured psyche with certain predispositions to feel, perceive, and react to the world in typically human ways. No one teaches us to fear the dark, snakes, or spiders. This is an archaic memory, an echo of the dangers our ancestors faced for millennia. No one teaches us to seek a savior in times of crisis, or to be fascinated by the image of the Divine Mother. These are primordial images that reside in the structure of our soul. The content of this collective ocean is not personal memories, but archetypes. Archetypes are the empty forms, the universal molds that are filled with the content of our individual experience. They are the characters of the great human drama, the hero, the great mother, the wise old man, the trickster, the anima, the inner feminine image in a man, the animus, the inner masculine image in a woman, and the shadow itself, which also has a collective dimension. This is why the myths, fairy tales, and religions of cultures that never had contact with each other are so astonishingly similar. The journey of Hercules in Greece, that of Buddha in India, that of Christ in the Middle East, they all tell the same archetypal story, the hero's journey. They are not copies, but spontaneous manifestations of the same psychic matrix that lives in all of us. The collective unconscious is proof that, beneath the thin layer of our cultural and individual differences, we are fundamentally one. We are all connected by this vast system of subterranean rivers. When you have a powerful dream, with strange images and numinous figures that do not seem to come from your personal experience, you are touching these deep waters. Your dream is not just yours. It may be a dream of humanity itself, speaking through you. Understanding the collective unconscious is revolutionary. It means that your deepest problems are not just yours. Your sense of abandonment, your search for purpose, your conflict between good and evil, all of this is part of the universal human drama. You are not alone. You are participating in a story much larger than your personal biography. Consciously accessing this level of the psyche is what distinguishes mere psychotherapy from a true spiritual journey. It is to come into contact with the accumulated wisdom of our species. Religious symbols, mandalas, great works of art, these are all bridges to this inner world. They heal and transform us because they connect us to something greater than our small ego. They remind us that our little life has a transpersonal meaning, a place in the grand cosmic scheme. The collective unconscious is the source of all great inspiration and all overwhelming madness. When an individual is flooded by it without proper preparation, we have psychosis. When an artist or a prophet manages to channel its power creatively, we have a masterpiece or a new spiritual revelation. Learning to navigate this ocean, to dialogue with its archetypes, is the ultimate goal of individuation, to become a unique individual who is, at the same time, a conscious vehicle for the totality of human experience. The archetypes are the vital organs of the collective psyche. They are the energy centers, the patterns of behavior, and the primordial images that structure our experience of the world. They are not ideas we learn. They are living realities that inhabit our unconscious, functioning as psychic instincts. They are the gods and goddesses of our inner pantheon, and whether you believe in them or not, they govern your life. Let's explore some of the most important ones. The hero is the archetype of the journey, of overcoming obstacles, and of the expansion of consciousness. It is the force within us that impels us to leave our comfort zone, to face dragons, our fears and complexes, and to seek a treasure, our wholeness or a greater good for the community. It lives in the young person who leaves home to conquer the world, in the scientist who seeks the cure for a disease, in the woman who leaves an abusive relationship to find herself. But every archetype has a shadow. The shadow of the hero is arrogance, the inflation of the ego. It is the savior who creates dependence, the workaholic who sacrifices family in the name of a mission, or the warrior who needs a constant enemy to feel alive. The great mother is the archetype of care, nourishment, the earth, the primordial womb from which everything comes and to which everything returns. She is nature, our personal mother, our capacity to love unconditionally and to create. In her light aspect, she is the love that sustains life. In her shadow, she is the devouring mother who suffocates the individuality of her children, who creates dependence and refuses to let go. It is the protectionism that prevents growth, the attachment that becomes a prison. The wise old man or the wise old woman is the archetype of knowledge, meaning, and spirituality. It is the voice of intuition, the inner guide who appears in our dreams as a mentor, a teacher, or a guru. It is our capacity for reflection, for finding a pattern in chaos, for seeing the truth behind illusions. His shadow is dogmatism, intellectual rigidity. It is the know-it-all who has lost touch with life, the intellectual who uses knowledge to feel superior, but is afraid of direct experience. It is the petrified dogma that kills the living spirit of truth. The anima and the animus are the archetypes of contrasexuality. The anima is the inner feminine image in a man's unconscious, shaped by his mother and all his experiences with women. She is his connection to emotion, creativity, intuition, and the soul. A man who integrates her is capable of deep relationships and a rich inner life. If she remains unconscious and projected, he will seek the perfect woman externally, or be dominated by irrational moods and sentimentality. The animus is the inner masculine image in a woman, shaped by her father and her experiences with men. He represents her capacity for logic, assertiveness, focused thought, and action in the world. If integrated, he gives her courage and clarity. If unconscious and projected, she may be dominated by rigid opinions and unquestionable truths, or she will seek a man to think and decide for her. To live is to be constantly under the influence of these and many other archetypes. The question is not whether they will act in your life, but whether you will be conscious of them. Without consciousness, we are mere puppets of the gods, repeating their eternal dramas. With consciousness, we can become creative partners, dialoguing with these immense forces and giving them a unique and individual expression through our lives. Now that we have distinguished the two layers of the unconscious, the personal and the collective, we can understand their dynamic interaction, which is the key to deciphering the enigma of the human condition. The crucial difference between them is their origin. The personal unconscious is biographical, acquired during your lifetime. The collective unconscious is historical, inherited with your humanity. However, they are not separate. The personal is the gateway to the collective. Imagine again, your personal crypt, personal unconscious has a secret trapdoor in the floor. Upon opening it, you no longer find Earth, but the waters of the great ocean collective unconscious. This is how it works in practice. You begin to analyze a personal complex, say, your father complex, your difficulties with authority figures, rooted in your relationship with your father. You explore your memories, your pain, your frustrations. This is the personal level. But if you continue to dig, you will realize that your struggle with your father echoes a much older story. The archetypal struggle between son and father, the old king and the young prince, the established order, and the new energy that must overthrow it to renew the kingdom. Your personal pain is revealed as an individual manifestation of a universal drama, the myth of Oedipus, of Cronus and Zeus. At this moment, healing transcends the personal level. You realize that your struggle is not just yours. You are not alone. Your biography connects with mythology. Your personal pain becomes a portal to transpersonal meaning. This process is called amplification. When a dream or a personal problem is amplified with parallels from myths, fairy tales, or religious symbols, it gains a new dimension. What seemed like a neurotic and meaningless problem reveals itself as a necessary part of your archetypal journey. For example, a woman who feels trapped in an abusive relationship, a personal problem, might dream that she is imprisoned in a castle guarded by a dragon. By amplifying this dream, we understand that she is living the myth of the damsel in distress and needs to activate her inner hero or animus to slay the dragon, the complex that keeps her trapped, and free herself. The problem is no longer just about her bad boyfriend and becomes an initiatory stage in her journey of individuation. This is why a purely biographical approach to psychology is insufficient. It may clear some of the rubble in the cellar, but it never opens the trapdoor to the ocean of meaning that lies beneath. Without the collective dimension, we remain stuck in the vicious cycle of blaming our parents or our past for our problems. With the collective dimension, we understand that our parents were also actors in their own archetypal dramas, and that we are all participating in a vast, interconnected tapestry. Your personal neurosis is your personal myth trying to be lived and understood. Depression can be the dark night of the soul necessary for transformation. Anxiety can be the hero's call to adventure, which is being ignored. Every suffering, seen through this lens, ceases to be a mistake to be eliminated and becomes a symbol to be deciphered, an invitation to a deeper level of consciousness. The great difference, therefore, is that the personal unconscious contains the what of your story, while the collective unconscious contains the universal why behind it. To integrate the two is to live a life that is both uniquely your own and profoundly human. How does the unconscious, this vast and non-verbal entity, communicate with our small and logical consciousness? It doesn't use words, it uses images. It uses the language of symbols, and the main theater where this language is staged is the dream. The dream is the natural bridge between the conscious and unconscious worlds. Every night, when the controlling ego falls asleep, the doors of the psyche open, and the figures of the inner world emerge to deliver their messages. A dream is never about what it appears to be on the surface. It speaks in metaphors, in a poetic and archaic language that needs to be deciphered. For Jung, the dream has a compensatory function. It always shows us what is lacking in our conscious attitude. If you are excessively rational and controlled in your waking life, your dreams may be full of chaos, wild emotions, and instinctual figures. If you are living too passively, you might dream that you are missing a train or that your car won't start. The dream is always trying to restore the balance of your psyche, calling your attention to the side you are neglecting. The characters and settings of a dream are, for the most part, aspects of yourself. The house in a dream usually represents your own psyche. Dreaming of unknown rooms in your house suggests parts of yourself you have not yet explored. The people who appear are often projections of internal complexes or archetypes. Dreaming of a beggar may represent a part of you that feels poor and neglected. Dreaming of an authority figure may be your father complex or the archetype of the wise old man manifesting. The big question is, does this figure come from your personal or collective unconscious? If you dream of your actual mother, the dream is likely dealing with your personal mother complex. But if you dream of a nature goddess or the Virgin Mary, the archetype of the Great Mother from the collective unconscious has been activated. This indicates that the theme of the dream has a much greater importance and energy. This is where symbols become crucial. A symbol is not a mere sign. A traffic sign points to one single thing. A symbol, on the other hand, is the best possible expression for something unknown. It is polysemous, full of meanings. Water, for example, can symbolize the unconscious, emotion, purification, birth, dissolution. The exact meaning depends on the context of the dream and the dreamer's associations. Symbols like the cross, the mandala, the serpent biting its own tail, Ouroboros, are archetypal, collective symbols. They appear in all cultures because they represent fundamental psychic processes, such as the union of opposites, cross, mandala, or cyclical self-renewal, serpent. Learning the language of dreams is like learning to hear the voice of your soul, or the voice of God, as the ancients said. It requires humility and patience. It requires that we abandon our rational certainty and enter into a dialogue with the mystery. Keeping a dream journal, working with them through active imagination, a process of conscious dialogue with the dream figures, and amplifying them with mythology are the tools for building this bridge. By doing so, the dream ceases to be a bizarre nightly event and becomes your most reliable guide on the journey of individuation, the personalized map that your unconscious draws every night to show you where you are and what the next step is. The ultimate goal of all this diving into the depths is not just analysis, but synthesis. The purpose of differentiating the personal from the collective unconscious is, ultimately, to integrate them consciously. This process, the work of a lifetime, is what Jung called individuation. Individuation is not individualism. Individualism is the emphasis on the ego, the attempt to stand out and be different from others. Individuation is the opposite. It is the process of becoming individual, that is, undivided, whole. It is the journey to become the unique person you were destined to be, in your totality, including all your contradictions, your light, and your shadow. Paradoxically, by becoming more authentically yourself, you also become more universally human. As you consciously realize the collective archetypes that live through you, the journey of individuation usually begins with a call. It can be a midlife crisis, a depression, the loss of a job or a relationship. It is a moment when the life built by the ego loses its meaning. The old masks no longer fit. This is the call from the self, the archetype of wholeness, the ordering center of the psyche of which the ego is only a small part. For the journey to begin, the first half of life is generally dedicated to adapting to the external world, building a career, a family, a social persona. The second half of life, ideally, should be dedicated to the inner journey, to the encounter with the self. The first great challenge, as we have seen, is the encounter with the personal shadow. It is the humble recognition of our own darkness, the withdrawal of our projections, and the acceptance of our moral ambivalence. Without this, no depth is possible. The second great challenge is the encounter with the anima, animus. It is the dialogue with our soul, our inner contrasexuality. For a man, it is learning to relate to his feelings, his intuition, and his creativity. For a woman, it is learning to relate to her thinking, her assertiveness, and her power. This encounter transforms how we relate to the opposite sex and opens the door to our inner life. Next come the archetypes of the wise old man or mana and the great mother. These are encounters with figures of spiritual power and inner authority. The danger here is inflation, identifying with the archetype, believing one has become a guru or a mother goddess. The task is to relate to them, to honor their wisdom, but to maintain the humility of the ego. Finally, the goal is the conjunction, the union of opposites within the psyche, symbolized by the image of the mandala or the alchemical wedding. The conscious ego is no longer the center of the personality. It becomes the servant of a larger center, the self. The individual no longer lives from a small, defensive center, but from a totality that embraces the conscious and the unconscious, the masculine and the feminine, the personal and the collective. An individuated person is not perfect. On the contrary, they are complete. They are aware of their shadow and therefore less likely to project it. They are in touch with their anima, animus, and therefore more creative and relational. They are connected to the self, and so their life has a sense of purpose and meaning that does not depend on external validation. Individuation is the process of becoming the hero of your own mythology, of living your life not as a biographical accident, but as a symbolic destiny, unique and, at the same time, universal. Why does all this matter? Why embark on this difficult and often painful journey instead of simply living life on the surface? The answer is simple and brutal, because what you resist persists, and what you ignore becomes your fate. Neurosis, in the Jungian perspective, is not a disease to be cured, but a sign that something in the psyche is trying to grow and is being blocked. Neurotic suffering, anxiety, depression, obsession. Phobia is the direct consequence of a one-sided life, of a dissociation between consciousness and the unconscious. Imagine that your psychic energy, your libido, is like a river. The natural flow of this river is towards wholeness, towards individuation. When the ego, with its fears and defenses, builds a dam, saying, "I don't want to deal with my shadow. I don't want to feel this pain. I don't want to change," the energy doesn't stop flowing. It accumulates behind the dam, creating immense pressure. This pressure is anxiety. Eventually, the dammed water begins to leak through cracks in distorted and uncontrollable ways. These leaks are neurotic symptoms. An obsession is a fragment of the unconscious trying to force its way into consciousness. A depression is often the weight of unlived energy, of the parts of ourselves that we have killed and that now weigh on our soul. The psyche does not tolerate stagnation. It demands movement. It demands life. When we refuse to face the challenges of our development, confronting the shadow, differentiating from our parents, finding new meaning in the second half of life, the energy turns against us. As the saying goes, if you don't take your gold to the blacksmith, it will turn into lead. Your unexpressed creativity becomes bitterness. Your unlived strength becomes passive aggression or psychosomatic illness. Your unfulfilled spiritual longing becomes an addiction or fanaticism. To ignore the unconscious is to live in a state of permanent civil war. The ego tries to maintain control, while the repressed forces of the unconscious wage guerrilla warfare, sabotaging your plans and undermining your happiness. It is a life of exhaustion, of constant effort to keep up appearances, while chaos reigns within. The loss of meaning that plagues the modern world is a collective symptom of this same dissociation. We have lost touch with myths, with rituals, with symbols, the bridges to the collective unconscious that gave meaning to the lives of our ancestors. We try to fill this void with consumerism, with entertainment, with superficial ideologies, but the soul remains hungry. Neurotic suffering, therefore, is not an enemy. It is a call. It is yourself, your totality, screaming through the pain, "Look here. You have forgotten an essential part of yourself. The path you are on is too narrow. Your soul needs more room to breathe." Answering this call is the most important act a human being can perform. It is trading the sterile security of the surface for the life-giving risk of the depths. It is choosing the pain of growth over the suffering of stagnation. Because the only alternative to this inner journey is not happiness, but an unlived life, a gray existence haunted by the ghost of who we could have become. The journey has been charted, the map has been revealed, but how do you take the first practical step to begin this sacred dialogue between the conscious and the unconscious? Transformation does not happen through a single cathartic event, but through a continuous practice, an attitude of reverence and curiosity towards your inner world. The key is to create a space for the unconscious to speak and to commit to listening. The first and most powerful tool is attention to dreams. Get a notebook and leave it by your bed. Every morning, before anything else, write down everything you remember from your dream, even if it's just fragments, feelings, or images. Don't try to interpret it immediately. Just honor the message by giving it form in the conscious world. The simple act of recording your dreams signals to the unconscious that you are listening. Over time, your dreams will become more vivid, more memorable, more meaningful. Set aside time to reflect on them. Ask yourself, what part of me is this character? What does this situation reflect about my current conscious attitude? The second tool is active imagination. This is a more advanced but profoundly transformative technique. Find a quiet place where you will not be interrupted. Close your eyes. Focus on an image from a dream or a mood that is disturbing you. Allow this image to come to life in your mind, and then dialogue with it. Ask the figure from your dream, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" Give it a voice, allowing it to respond without censorship. This is not a passive daydream. It is a conscious engagement with the autonomous realities of the psyche. It is a way of bringing complexes and archetypes into the light, transforming them from hidden masters into dialogue partners. The third key is attention to the shadow in daily life. Pay attention to your strong emotional reactions. When someone deeply irritates you, ask yourself, what quality in this person is activating something in me? What part of my shadow am I projecting onto them? Pay attention to your slips of the tongue, your inexplicable mistakes. They are direct messages from the unconscious, revealing your true intentions behind the conscious facade. The fourth practice is non-directed. Creative expression. Paint, draw, dance, write, sculpt with clay, not with the goal of creating a work of art, but as a way of giving voice to what cannot be said in words. Allow your hands to move freely. Let the images and forms emerge from within you without judgment. This is a powerful channel for the unconscious to manifest, bypassing the ego's censorship. Finally, the fundamental attitude is to take your inner life seriously. Treat your soul with the same respect you would give a sacred text or a wise mentor. Understand that the events of your life, especially the difficult ones, are not accidents. They are symbols. They are part of your personal mythology unfolding. Constantly ask yourself, what is the meaning of this? What is this situation trying to teach me? To what growth is this pain calling me? To begin this dialogue is to light a small candle in the vast darkness of the unconscious. At first, the light may seem faint, but if you protect it and feed it with your attention and respect, it will grow. And that light will not only illuminate the secret chambers of your own soul, but will become a beacon, guiding you through the inevitable storms of life toward the safe harbor of your own unshakable wholeness.